So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Babajide Ashegbeloyi. I work with First City Monument Bank as the head of tech space ecosystem business, where I drive the bank's engagement within the tech ecosystem by engaging tech startups, government agencies that support technology and the innovation ecosystem. I also strategically drive the bank's tech hub one, which is a physical representation of what we are doing or what we intend to do in the tech ecosystem. And several of our engagements at hub one includes different programs that we've designed to support technology startups, tech enthusiasts, innovation enthusiasts, generally in the tech ecosystem in Nigeria and Africa. And one of such programs is our Epic Hour. Epic Hour is a program that occurs every month where we bring very important people to come speak to members of the tech ecosystem, of one community and non-of one community members on different important topics that can assist their tech startups scale, grow, and different forms of topics that we feel are very, very important. So what that means is that every speaker that we bring on board to Epic Hour has been properly selected, and be assured that there's going to be a lot for us to learn. This program today, and as always, is brought to you in partnership with Passion Incubator. Passion Incubator is an incubator and accelerator out of Lagos, and they manage and operate of one's physical space and some of our programs. So I want to also appreciate them for making today possible. So straight to it, I'm very excited that we have our speaker today, Dairo Giuliani. Dairo Giuliani is the director at Briter, which is a research and data-driven company that is focused on servicing the underserved market. And our topic today is very, very important because it is something that as a member of the tech ecosystem, as a mentor to several tech startups, and as someone that provides advisory to tech startups, part of the gaps we've also noticed is that founders at times don't do adequate research before they come about the solution, or even when they've come about or implemented the solution, they don't consistently maintain a research and development culture. So I'm very excited for us having Dairo Giuliani, the director at Briter Bridges, and I think I would sort of hand over the conversation to you from here. So for quick etiquettes on this call and to make it very easy for everyone, I would say if you are not speaking, kindly mute your mic. Where necessary, if you have questions after Dario is done, you can chat your question via the chat box, and we'll read as much as possible and have Dario respond to those questions. So everyone, thank you for joining us. Today in Nigeria, we have a public holiday, so we wish our Muslim brothers all the best today. So Dario, thank you, and I believe that we're going to have a very exciting time engaging you. Welcome, and welcome to every of our attendees, and I can assure you that there's so much to be learned today. Thanks. So over to you, Dario.
Thank you, Babajide. Hello, everyone. I think you can see me. Let me know if you would like to wait a bit for other participants to join, just for them to avoid missing some of the content. So for So, Babajida, you tell me if you would like me to wait. Otherwise, I'll carry on just giving a bit of introduction
Oh,
to Briter.
yeah. Okay. So I think what we can do, like you've admonished, is the time here is about 5 after 4. So we can wait for, let's say, another 5 minutes. Then um, once we're done and the time elapses, you just go ahead. So I
Sure.
think that's fine. Yeah. Okay.
It's a public holiday. People are on the sofa, and
Yeah.
we need to wait for them
Understand.
to, you know.
Yeah. True. Okay. Let's do that. So 5 minutes, then you just start. For those of us that are joining, what we've done is we've started, but we just want to wait for an extra 5 minutes, considering the fact that this is a public holiday. So we want to give people ample time to come on board, so that we would have a good size. Then Dairo Giuliani can go ahead. Thank you.
Bajid, I'm happy to start.
So once more, welcome again to the Obon Epic Hour. For those that were not online when we started, I did mention that Epic Hour is one of several programs that Obon, owned by First City Monument Bank, has created to support the technological ecosystem in Nigeria, with emphasis on tech startups, so tech founders and tech enthusiasts. This program holds on a monthly basis, and this is the October edition. And today we are having Dairo Giuliani, who is the founder, director at Briter Bridges. And I think is best suited to discuss with us this angle around research and development, and its importance to innovation in the technological ecosystem. I think this conversation today is very important because, like I did also mention, that from experience, one of the greatest challenges that tech startups do face in this part of the world is lack of adequate research before going to market. And in addition to that, even when the product has been launched, there is usually not that perpetual spirit of consistent and continual research and development. And this is not only peculiar to tech startups, it is also a common phenomenon with even big companies in this part of the world. And we see that not so many people have the right kind of budget to focus on R&D. So I'm very excited that we're having Dario today. I think you'll be in the best place to talk about Briter Bridges, what they do, and also to take us through this conversation today. So for a simple etiquette, like I did also mention, is if you have any questions, please, you are permitted to send it via the chat. And we will try to read through them and ask Dario, and he would answer as quickly as possible and as much as he can. So once more, thank you everyone for joining us. And for our Muslim brothers, God bless you during this period of this holiday. So I hand over to Dario now to take us through this journey, take us through this conversation. So I'm excited. Let's just fasten our seatbelt and, listen tight to this fantastic conversation we're going to have with Dario today. So Dario, over to you. Thank you.
Fantastic, thanks, Bajid. Okay, so the conversation today is around, I guess, the role of research, especially for founders, especially for organizations that are entering the market or are planning to enter the market with an idea or a product. The way I've structured the slides is a big presentation about, who we are, just to set the context. And one of the key questions around methodologies and effective, research strategies for founders, and then how effectively maybe research and data can help position or at least get a better understanding of the role that your company or your future company could play in the ecosystem. So what problems it's looking to tap into, what solutions it's coming up with, who else is working in the same space. And then, I'll be looking into some of the the values and the strategies to really, and the nitty-gritty details of what to do when carrying out research or planning to carry out research. So I'll just start sharing my screen. I put together a few slides. I hope you enjoy. At any point, I think, at any point you can really interrupt me, and I'm happy to clarify. don't necessarily need to, you know, if this concept that you might want to clarify, just let me know. Don't hold it until the end for everyone's to, you know, probably understand it better. So can anyone confirm that you are seeing my PowerPoint presentation? Yeah.
Yes, we can see you.
Superb. So, okay, so how can startup leverage data and research to build stronger businesses? Okay. So who are we? Just to set the context, Briter is a UK company, is active all across the continent and also in other what we call emerging and underserved markets. So not just African countries, and we have an office in Kenya as well. And it's a core team of 4 with a number of collaborators that work with us on, you know, a daily basis. Lisa and I were based in the UK, and then Josh and Clara were based in Nairobi. What do we do? For those who don't know Briter, who've never come across our name or our work, we've established a sort of brand in this realm of mapping, activity tracking across the continent mainly, but we've been also spanning through other regions, as I mentioned, and we've produced, I guess, the largest visual collection of information across, you know, startup ecosystems in Africa. And this spans, you know, across hubs, startups, tech communities, academia, investors, donors, and charities. What we did was last year, you know, we started the construction last year, and in May this year, we finally launched the Briter Intelligence, which is now basically effectively the digitization of the work that we've been doing over the past 2 years. Briter is actually turning 2 on Saturday. So this is our birthday week, effectively. And in May, we launched the Briter Intelligence, which is freely accessible and allows, you know, founders, investors, corporates, students, researchers to have access to a very broad range of data. As you can see, you can have access, you know, if you look at the right hand side, there are 2 key functions. One is add your own. So once you've searched for your company, if you don't find it, then feel free to add it. Our team will verify, will approve, and then will allow you also permission to control your company. Okay, so you can keep it up to date, and it doesn't only have to be our team to work in this. And then the second function is not really a function; it's really a just you know, a little slide that you have here that is the real-time tracker and is a real-time aggregator of whatever query you might run on the platform. So looking into companies, into whatever region, into whatever country of operation. As I mentioned, we started with Africa, so we have most of the data on Africa, but we've been researching also across Middle East, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, and also Latin America. Now, one of the questions that I've been asking, and I'm gonna try to answer, is effective methodologies, you know, when it comes to research for startups. I would like to extend this to, you know, the realm of early stage companies and companies in general, even though later stage, obviously, they have some built-in systems and talent that look into this. But especially for early stage, there's a dire need for this type of, you know, whatever we're going to delve into right now, but this type of effort and this type of resources. So one suggestion, and that I like to put forward, but also one of my strongest thoughts, I think, is the research is in itself innovation, in the sense that innovation is, you know, the process of bringing something new to the table and devising a solution to, doesn't necessarily have to be a problem, but can be simply something that you've identified as in need for change, for amendment, for innovation, for disruption. And so in the life of a business owners encounter this moments several times, right, in the lifetime of this business, because they encounter new types of audience, of customers. They have new competitors coming up. There's a behavioral change that implies that the product or service provided isn't longer sort of viable or attractive, right? And so innovation in research in this sense allows to keep the engine moving, right? Keep the engine sort of lubricated, and then you're able to always be, on the move, and always be able to adapt faster to change. And a continuum in the sense that research needs to encompass every single step of the development of a business, and it shouldn't be thought as a standalone department that works in silos, right? And this is also, so to some degree, a criticism to the world of large corporate, which, because of the the very static and rigid structure that they have at scale, they find it hard to embed innovation, and there are very, very few the companies that are able to embed innovation all all around the structure of the company. And so that's why I'm saying a continuum. It's better to understand that there's a need for refreshing, to learn, to innovate, to change the product, and to change the service, and to try to respond to more answers and more questions all throughout the life of the business, right? So to start with, this is kind of a paradox, but I would say, what are the strategies for successful R&D? First, there's no single method, right? There's no blueprint. A biotechnology company will have different problems than a logistic company distributing cassava, right? And Briter, as a research and data company, will have different problems than an event company. So what's very important is to identify, and this is what leads to the second point, is to identify, what is mainly in in need for innovation and research based on whatever market you're entering, right? So and so what is the best way probably to be able to bypass this issue? To allocate internal resources to this. So instead of thinking as of research, as any company are doing, as something that you need to outsource, or something that you need to do once in every now and then, there should be a need for allocating internal resources, internal specific days of the week where there's a reconfiguration of the way things are done, and within this identify which areas are in need for reconfiguration. Is it operation, because the cost structure is too high? Is it product, because the product might not be responding to the right audience, right? And finally, and this will lead to all the next points, especially market research which is what also Briter focuses on, is really key when it comes to identifying who is doing what, and especially who is already doing something that could be conducive, synergistic, or in competition, right, with a specific company, a specific product or service, right? So this question is how to become attractive, for the global market, and how you can leverage research and data for this, building on what we were saying before. This is not just for the global market, but this is for growth, for sustainability, right? Obviously, global market is the ultimate goal. Scalability is the ultimate goal, I guess, of companies, and obviously internationalization is an ultimate goal to some extent. So delving into this a bit, what are the key points that I identify as strategic? First, it doesn't need to focus really on your own product or service, understanding, and by focus I mean you could see like probably new sub points over here popping up, looking at the product, understanding who is doing what and whether the market is actually responding to your service, and not trying to perpetuate an idea because that's an idea that sounds sexy in your head, if the idea doesn't have a solid sort of welcome from the market. If the market is not endorsing it, if the market, like, and bear in mind, there's this trick, and this many founders will relate to this. There's this trick, which is a very dangerous slippery slope, that when you go for beers with your friends and you say, I have this idea, I'm working for this, in that moment you tend to abstract your friends and you mistake them for your target audience. And so what happens is you sit down with them and you're like, I've got this idea, I'm working on this. Maybe you have some nice slide decks on your phone. You show them, everyone is impressed. Oh, this is really cool, man. This is really cool. I'm sure this will have a lot of traction. And you start getting hype and adrenaline through your blood. And then you tend to forget that, sometimes the people that you're talking to that approve or seem to endorse what you are doing might not be the people that you need to ask for an opinion, right? Because there's an emotional opinion and there's an analytical opinion and there's an opinion that is driven by need, right? And opinion that are driven by need are those that you will ultimately want to look for, and they're ultimately those that will belong to your customers, right? And so there's a kind of funnel in there that, a percentage of people that shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, and you need to make sure that as a founder you identify the right people who you're talking to. And then if we want to take this then one step further, this very process that I described of getting a sense of the appreciation of what you're building is pretty much primary data collection, okay? Market research. Now, there's one very harsh criticism that I have, especially since I've started working across the continent a few years ago. And there seems to be a narrative that goes the following way. I'm a founder and I've identified an African problem and I'm building a solution that is African, made by African. And now this tends to be a kind of error, a design error from the start, because what you get is often a sort of setback from the market, especially from investor, because when they're going to sit down with you and going to try to look at the scalability of what you're building, will find the usual problems that might arise when talking about business scalability when it comes to startups, especially in tech in Africa, which is low purchasing power widely, especially for B2C, and a market that is fast changing. And so a problem with establishing and keeping a product established for a longer while, and so on and so forth. I think I'm hoping that all that I'm saying will resounding in your head as I guess entrepreneurs, and then this will lead to the last 2 points, which is sustainability versus external cash and real versus vanity metrics, right? When looking into scalability and we're looking into how to substantiate, what you are building and what drives what you're building through data, it's very important to not get sort of charmed by metrics like single time user that never log back into whatever you're building, retweets, right? Likes when you buy Facebook ads, and so on and so forth, because these are not exactly what are going to, the metrics that are going to change your business. In fact, they might be the metrics that accelerate the death of your business. And the other point number 3 is the fact that, especially in the startup world, because the startup world belongs to a whole specific bubbly narrative, there's this association of success with the ability to raise external cash. And now the ability to raise external cash is a skill, which is a remarkable skill, which is very useful, but which is not a proxy for being able to build a business. And this is because when you, and this also kind of links with learning and research into your business, when you build a business, you are building a product, testing it out, testing it on user, getting feedback from them, perhaps getting, achieving sales, and then achieving, maybe some of the sales will continue, will become recurring sales, other won't. And this very process is ultimately the process that allows you to learn about what you're doing, whether what you're doing is working and is teaching you something, versus a very separate, process which sometimes gets confused, which is the process of raising cash, which is the process of basically convincing your investors that your company, like, to make a bet that your company is worth making a bet on, right? And the ability to actually convince investor doesn't always translate into the ability to build a sustainable business in the longer run, because within the sustainability of the business, you have, learning about your team, learning about when your team gets bored, and learning about when your team needs refreshing or needs a new oxygen, in a sense, that needs new skills, and learning when the curve of the demand is shifting or is moving because the market is changing, learning when your competitor, or there are new competitor in the game which you hadn't foreseen, or you hadn't seen coming, and who are building solutions that are actually effectively decreasing your market, like your market pool, your market share, and all of this. And these are, and I know of companies that have spent the last 2 years going on steroids of challenges and competitions and pitch shows and television and VC money that haven't yet achieved sustainability, that haven't yet reached a break even. And bear in mind, I do acknowledge the fact that several businesses need an injection of cash to be sustainable, but the ultimate rule of a business is the ability to produce and sell a product and making money out of it and create sustainability out of it, right? So while there will be companies that need an early injection of cash in order to get to that sort of, not even break-even point, but like the revenue generation moment, many other companies don't, right? And many other companies also do not have the ability to bring or guarantee the right returns to investors. And so the very process of looking for money might be tricky and might even detrimental to the actual growth of a business. Will surely allow your business to grow fast, but with a sort of short-sightedness, as opposed to sort of building brick by brick, but really learning about your market and sort of try to focus on the real metrics, on the metrics that matter. So these are the, I guess, a few points as to what I think people should focus on when looking at specific data and when looking at specific research to do. Let's focus on the competitors. Let's focus on the product. Is my product still relevant for the market that I'm operating in? Is there a new competitor that might just swallow my product, or is there a new competitor that might acquire my product, or might sort of strike a trade deal with me that will guarantee my scalability, etc., etc. So a few slides about research. Again, anyone can interrupt me if there's anything that you don't understand. So design for the bigger picture. When, how do I put it? When working on research, it's very important to, let's say you're working on a market research to understand your landscape, right? It's essential to identify all the little moving pieces of this puzzle, right? That could contribute to the life or death of your business. And when I say this, I mean not only in the short term. So who is could guarantee the life or business of your or life or death of your business today, but also in at scale. Who will be the moving pieces of this puzzle once I get to phase 2? Who will be the moving pieces of the puzzle when I get to phase 3? And it's very important to ask, yourself these questions early on, because that will also guarantee, will determine the direction that your business takes, and also the direction of your day-to-day operations, right? And the time is a scarce resource, right? And you want to allocate the resource, the right resources to your business. And so it's very important to identify early on what moving pieces of this this business life puzzle you might encounter, right? Now, one of the key questions as a founder you need to ask and actively take action on is, who is already doing this, right? I think oh, thanks, Richard. So is anyone already doing this, right? This is a question that we've asked before, but how do I take action, active action on this? Understanding the breadth of the product that you're, or like the scope of the product, or the potential of your product, and then try to picture a sort of solar system of different pieces of the puzzle that could be synergistic to you or in competition with you. And based on this, you would want to probably design your future step when it comes to, for instance, product development, right? Not, especially when it comes, one thing that we're seeing, especially at Briter, we're working on this. We're looking at how companies are multiplying their service, right? There's a rise of super apps. Payment companies are now adding API, and now adding points of sales, that are adding accounting systems, etc., etc. And it's very important to understand whether the efforts, the resources that you are allocating to a specific outcome will, have the potential to have a return on that investment, especially in a place like Nigeria, and I'll get to this in a moment, where a lot of young entrepreneurs are entering the game and are growing fast, offering, I guess, disruptive products and services to an audience which is very broad, which is very hungry for innovation, right? Third, this is mainly, I guess, takes a step back when it comes to the methodology of doing research. When you do market research, especially in new market, let's say you're expanding to a new city, you're expanding to a new sector, you're expanding to a new country, it's very important to understand who the gatekeepers are. And by gatekeepers, I mean, who are the relevant people that you want to know, that you want to know about, and that you want to talk to in the specific space where you're entering, right? It's very important that you understand also the power relation. We've seen recently, and new startups launching, and then bans being applied to these sectors, and this has spanned from Kenya to Nigeria, right, to London, right? We've seen some pushback from specific existing pools of players. So it's always very important to understand, and this is not just a detail, because this determines the life or death of your business when it comes to scale or multiply or increase the service offering that you have. So it's not something, it might sound as an isolated case, but it's very important to first identify and second, not mess around specific or find a way around specific potential obstacles. And if identifying the gatekeepers and people that are relevant and organizations that are relevant in a specific space ahead of making decision and taking further steps is key. Now we've done quite a bit of work recently as Briter in Nigeria, and I think this will probably be the part of the presentation that is less boring and more applied, and especially because it obviously looks at your country's ecosystem. So what are the potential and the attractive traits of Nigeria's tech ecosystem? So this is, I apologize for the quality. We have a high quality file that I can share. This is just a screenshot that I took earlier because it wouldn't upload on my PowerPoint, but this is actually publicly available. So needless to say, the Nigerian ecosystem counts hundreds of organizations and counts dozens of investors that are active at all stages. Lead Space, Fashion Incubator, the bank are just a few that we could see already in this call that operate every day to support the ecosystem. But we also have very large players that have been establishing their presence globally. And obviously everyone has been very hyped about Paystack last week. But at the same time, last year, we saw Visa acquiring a large stake into Switch, which is effectively the father of Paystack, in the sense that they've tapped into digital payment earlier on. And at the same time, we also have a thriving and growing ecosystem at early stage. So a thriving support ecosystem at the early stage. So on the top left, ecosystem builders, again, I apologize for the quality, but we do have the high quality version. You can see, lots of logos indicating, the different types of hubs that have been supporting the ecosystem over the past few years. Just today, there was an announcement of CC Hub, which on top of acquiring iHub, acquired another Kenyan company called Ilimu, as a subsequent chapter into this endeavor that they embarked on to provide quality education to Nigerians and to other African countries' populations. And I mean, we could go on and on discussing the breadth and the composition and nature of the Nigerian ecosystem, not least the thriving agricultural and fintech sector. But I'd like to move on to this other slide, which gives you an idea of, going back to the first part of the presentation about research and identification of specific stakeholders, an idea of how having a bird's eye view into the ecosystem could actually help you make a better decision and identify who could help, who could compete, and who could be just, synergistic with you. So what you see here is a snapshot. This is by no means comprehensive. This doesn't want to be a mapping. This wants to be a sort of relational graph, a relational scheme that allows you to see the different pieces of the puzzle that I was mentioning before, right? So what we define as aggregator, so community. This very webinar, right? Some sort of aggregator, and now digital aggregators are the new aggregators, right? In the last few months and foreseeably in the next few. But also investors and angel networks or hubs and networks of hubs, right? Tech communities of coders, of designers, of illustrators, of artists. And then again, how these intersect with the startups, the startup world, how these intersect with corporate, and how corporate intersect with hubs when they provide some sort of corporate support and corporate venture capital dedicated to startups, and also how there are increasing opportunities in the merger and acquisition space, and so the merger and acquisition stop being some sort of phantom of these micro tech economies, but become active options when it comes to exit, when it comes to scale, when it comes to collaboration, right? And then again, research and advisor, right? We recently worked with Endeavor and also with Steers. They operate in Nigeria, they operate in other countries, and several organizations like them. Now, moving to the top left and right, we also then have the role of donors and the role of philanthropy, and then the role of government and how government is actually now taking a step, recognizing first the role of tech. For instance, setting up, the National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA, but also the collaboration between governments, such as the UK Nigeria Tech Hub, or the Lagos State Innovate, initiative. It's very this to say that it's very key to understand. This is something that we haven't published. We use it for presentation specifically, and this is to drive a conversation around the opportunities in understanding system in leveraging system thinking when doing anything really related to business or creativity. Okay. Now, just 3 quick slides about the potential for Nigeria, right? Also, would you tell me how long do I have left? Because I think I've completely lost track of time. So this is the Briter Intelligence. Again, our platform is largely free. All the functions that I'm showing you right now are free. Looking at Nigeria, now we have 978 players. There's definitely more. These are the ones that belong to the categories that we have in our database, mainly on the digital, green, and sort of circular economy and tech, across 60 sectors, across over 260 products and services, and for companies that have raised over $700 million in 2020. Okay, so just that is a message, is an ammunition to anyone who wants to do, who's asking about doing business and opportunity in Nigeria, especially now that we're seeing so much vibrancy and so much activity and so much kind of unrest when it comes to the recognition, the acknowledgement of so much potential in the youth of Nigeria. This sidebar wants to send a message in a nanosecond. There are, at the very least, 8,000 organizations that are working every day, as much as you and I are doing right now in this webinar, to provide for services, provide for needs, hence providing services and product that are somewhat useful across 60 sectors, right? And also, these companies have been able to raise within a matter of 10 months during the year when there was a global pandemic and the world kind of froze for a few months, almost $1 billion, right? A bit of sort of diving into this data. Obviously, here you only have Nigeria because you selected that. Our database counts a lot of financial technology companies, and then again, health and agriculture also thriving, especially digital health, especially as you can see here, investment platforms, meaning also crowdfunding platform for farmers, payments and payment gateways, ed tech comprising sort of teleeducation, right? So e-learning, tutoring, directories, and then again, a lot of investment going into solar energy, especially at household level and market, sort of business to business level. And then further down, this slide gives you an idea of, just a few. Obviously, you can scroll down if you go on the platform, but it gives you an idea of the breadth of deals and the size of deals for companies that operate in Nigeria. These are not necessarily companies that only operate in Nigeria, but when you select country of operation Nigeria, you also have companies like DPO, which used to be a Kenyan company, or Branch, which is a US company and is active across the continent, or Ancopa and Zola Electric and so on and so forth. But like companies that are operating on the continent, especially at tech level, we're not talking about corporate, we're not talking about banks, we're not talking about traditional industries, we're talking about digital companies and sort of neo material company, like this, if you want to consider solar power as a solar panel as kind of advanced material. And this just looks at those, right? So this is pretty much the presentation that I put together, but we can go on and discuss. I'd like to hear a few questions, especially from founders. But yeah, Brigida, tell me if you have also any questions or if you'd like to ask on behalf of everyone.
Yeah, so there are a couple of questions that we do have here. I think I will just read a few that have been written properly, so that we don't get confused. So I would like to quickly say that for those sending questions, please go straight to the point. No need to have a prelude and for your question. Just go straight to the point. So it's easier. Because it's difficult reading the guys that have preludes for their questions. Okay, so someone asked a question. What do you do when someone is already doing what you intend to do? What if, so typically in the Nigerian market or anywhere in the world, you want to go into a new space and you have a lot of people doing it. Let me merge that with, can you hear me? I hope you can hear me, Dairo. Yeah. Okay, so let me merge that with the second question, which I think is very important. How do you get industry data in Africa, particularly Nigeria, where accurate and up-to-date data is hard to get? So let me just ask those two questions first, because it's a real problem, and I think I'm very excited what you're trying to do at Briter Bridges, bridging the gap around lack of data and providing data for intelligent decisions. So let me see your responses to those two questions briefly.
Sure. Thanks. I mean, when it comes to building something that someone is already working on, I mean, as a human being, even as a business person, I would ask myself, why do I want to do that? Not as in, am I crazy? Very practically, what is the rationale behind working on something yourself that is already being done by someone else, as opposed to trying to do it with this person? Like, why are you looking to compete, right? Why are you looking to build yourself? There are many reasons to this. It can be pride. It can be you just want to do it because you think you can do it better, in commercial and in financial and economic reasons, meaning like that you think you've got a better solution to that, and so you think that can actually give you a job, and you can actually sell it. All legitimate reasons, right? There's no good or bad. There's no bad in wanting to compete with someone, but it's just effectively the reason why. Like, also, what are the barrier to entry in this specific area, right? Ask yourself, what resources this person or this organization has deployed to be where what it is, and figure out whether you have them, and figure out what extra cost you might not foresee. Try to be very practical about things and very transparent about the whys behind it. Again, Just this is my opinion. This is not what you should do. Like this is what comes to my mind reading your, you're reading your question. Don't take my word as the holy scriptures. Just like this is my words want to sort of boost and new questions, right? Questions that you might want to ask yourself. Why do I want to do it? Why do I think it's better, right? Sometimes, for instance, Briter wasn't born as a data company. It kind of became one, and we rode with it. And we ended up kind of providing service that maybe was better than some people that were already doing kind of this, because we ended up doing a better job, or like because we think the market ended up working with us, right? And so the avenues that lead you to where you are countless. So obviously you need, based on an understanding and an analysis of where you are, you might want to sort of make specific decision and ask yourself specific questions. I hope this answers your question. And at a bakery, right? Sure. There you go. So, Ibrahim, so I would say, first, I'm not an expert in bakery and food and beverage. So this is my disclaimer. Okay, thank you. Actually, this makes me, raises another point. Sometimes competition doesn't mean ultimate blood fight, right? Sometimes you can just build a business that accommodates a market because you think there's enough market for it, right? It's not that like because you build a bakery, like you are destroying your competitor business, right? Right. I buy Nike, but also buy Vans, and also I buy whatever, Adidas, right? And I haven't seen either of the three failing in the last few years because I bought one each, right, every year. And do you know what I mean? It's competition exists. Competition doesn't mean like zero-sum fight with nuclear blasts, right? So obviously there's market for everyone, and there are specific markets that are ripe for competition because the demand is very high. There are markets that allow for less competition. So I guess the question would be, at that point, will there be enough market? How harsh is the competition, right? I hope this answers a bit your question.
I think I would just add to what you said, Dario. Considering the question that has been asked, just to add some additional context based on what I see every day engaging startups. First and foremost, I would like to sort of enlighten, and I say it at different forums, that startups are not the same thing as SMEs, small and medium scale enterprises. And I think in this part of the world, we usually confuse a startup as a SME. So I would not call a bakery business a startup. So a bakery business, the model has been tested. All you need most of the time is you need a baker, you need the baking machine, so it's a clear tested model. And like Dairo did mention, if the market is big enough, we say something jokingly at times that the sky is big enough for everyone to fly. So if the market is big enough for the supply of bread, that doesn't stop you. But the reality is that to keep up in the game, you must ensure that your cost of production makes sense. And I think secondly, there must be a unique selling point with your bread, so does it have a unique taste? Is there a reason why people should come back? Was the bread designed for the masses? So is it what we call in Nigeria here agege bread? So are you selling the unrefined bread in the market targeted at the masses, and you are not taking it to the high end? that would need maybe sliced bread or croissant or whatever. So that's what I'll say to that. That don't let us confuse startups as SMEs because they are not the same. This is something I say most of the time, and I think for the kind of business bakery, it's a model that has been tested, and I think the market is big enough for everyone. I think there's a question here. I think I'll just read it out.
Just to in the meantime, if I can answer quickly the second question that you asked
Yes.
before, because we forgot it.
Yes.
When it comes to data collection, so there are many different ways. Depends on what data you're looking at. Like if you're looking at like consumer data, if you're looking at confidential data that you need to analyze. For instance, you're a hospital, your government needs them to analyze for specific policies. So you need to know who's had specific disease, etc., death rate, etc. It really depends. You need to have a system for each. When it comes to market research, we operate with a lot of data aggregation, but also with a lot of back and forth with partners, right? So we produce content, we do initiatives in collaboration. For instance, this allows me to understand a bunch of, gives me information about the demographic of who listens to this webinar, what the trends are, like what industries people are interested in, right? Someone is asking about social media, right? I guess there's interest in traditional companies, but there's also interest in media and new business models and new needs and new demand, right? So it really depends. When it comes to us, we collect data usually from, because we do B2B and corporate data, we usually collect data from the companies themselves, especially through the platform, but also through questionnaires, through calls, through research, through internet search, etc. But Judith, what was the question that you were reading?
So I wanted to ask a quick question, so someone asked a very short question, and I think it's important. Best practice dealing with gatekeepers. So I'll just ask two questions. So the first question is, what are the best practices dealing with gatekeepers? So I think this is referencing part of what was included in your presentation. So the person is very important question is asking best practice, dealing with gatekeepers because they're very important. Then let me just ask the second one, though it's lengthy. Build a prototype and test the market with it, or go out in the field and carry out a market research before building a product. Which approach do you think is better and cheaper to launching an idea in Africa? Because on your experience, based on your experience. So I think in summary, what this person is simply asking is, do I just build the prototype and risk it and push it to the market and wait for people's feedback? Or I should spend a bulk of my time trying to do a detailed market research and using that market research as the foundation of building the product? So those are the two questions that I just want us to answer now. Then we have some like two questions. I think our time is fast spent. Then we'll see how we can go from there. Okay,
sure. Good questions about the gatekeepers. I think increasingly, just in business in general, I'm seeing that people want clarity and want straightforwardness. Like when people approach you, or like you approach people and you don't really have a clear ask because you yourself haven't either done the job, or you don't even have much interest, or maybe it's too early, or maybe like you haven't been careful enough. People tend to be a bit sort of stricter or a bit unresponsive. I think first it depends on what you're asking, what you're approaching people for. So gatekeepers mean gatekeepers for specific area, right? Like associations or specific investors or specific people or research organizations or authorities. These are organizations that will interconnect and relate to your business in a very individual and specific way. So you need to understand what exactly is your request, and as a second step, understand why, like better figure it out early, why that person would be interested in giving you time and even answering your question, especially if the question requires effort from their end, right? And you always need to keep in mind that people like consider themselves busy even if they're not. So you always need to take for granted that you are approaching someone who, as a status quo, is busy, and so you are taking time away from this person. And so the faster and the clearer your ask is, and the more accommodating it is for the other person, the better, right? Usually, like, for instance, it's interesting to come up with a system of incentive for the person. Why is the person working? What does the person need to give time for you? Is there an exchange that you are having? Is the person just there and her role is actually to provide information to people like you, which would be faster? Like, is this person there and potentially actually you're gonna compete with whatever this person is building? So ask yourself the right question and try to be as clear as you can. In principle, I also think people, yes, are busy. I also think people are lazy, are non-responsive, but I also think a lot of people are very helpful, and a lot of people want to help and want to provide information and want to be out there and want to know what is going on. So it's this pro and cons to this, and I think clarity from your end, from their end, is the best. I hope this answers your questions. It always depends on case by case. It depends on what you're talking about, who you're talking to, and what for. Question about product. This is a catch-22. In principle, every question that we just asked could be answered. This needs to be a case-by-case situation, right? There are cases where you shouldn't build a bakery. There are cases where you should build a bakery. There are cases where you should build the product first. There are cases where you should do the research, right? And this boils down to what I was saying at the beginning. Try to understand where you're standing. If you're an amazing set of developers with business skills, with super connections, it's very, like, you're more likely than someone who just comes out of Lagos University computer sciences bachelor to succeed, because business doesn't equal skill. Business equals skills applied to a need that is perceived, that is embraced, and possibly paid for, and possibly made sustainable through a system of sustainable production of a specific services product and sustainable demand for that, and purchasing power, on top of which you get regulation, taxes, COVID-19, and all these guys, right? So everything is it's hard. That's why it's very important for you to understand where you stand, who you are, what is your unique selling point, what is your competitive advantage over other people, right? What are the resources that you have at stake? What is your commitment? For instance, if you're coming up with a solution, what I think is that often businesses grow out of projects, in the sense that you have that side project that you're doing, that side project takes off, and you're like, oh crap, I need to leave my full-time job because I cannot keep up with this. I think this is, in many cases, what actually happens. But there are cases where you actually come up with a nice idea. You're like, I'm going to do my research. I'm going to do, all the handbook, Startup Lean and Harvard Business Review kind of stuff. And then you end up building a business. I'm a bit more skeptical about this, but it's important that you understand also the commitment that you have. So, like, how passionate are you about doing the market research for something that you never even tested, right? As opposed to, actually, I've come up with something that is cool. When I was a student, people seem to be buying it. Now I know how to build it better. I'm just gonna figure out how to test it. I guess one of the bottom line for this is try to build cheap. try to build in a way that will allow you to get to market fast, because then people, instead of saying, oh, this would be a great idea, will say, oh, this is a good minimal prototype, right? So I guess there's a, this is a 50-50, right? It's try to build fast and cheap in a way that you can actually project. I'll tell you my experience with Briter Intelligence. Before I had Briter Intelligence, it was very hard for me to pitch the fact that we were a data company. Now I don't even have to pitch a data company, because when I send out a blurb, people log into the platform and see it and understand it. And from there, they go into the about page and they see what we've done, right? Let your content and let your product speak for yourself, right? If you're a great plumber, everyone will know that you're a great plumber because the word goes around. If you're building a great product, the product will move around, right? If you're building great content, content will go around. That's usually how it is. It's not the other way around. Like, it's much harder to have the other way around. The other way around, doing market research when you just start is different than the market research that Deloitte puts on the plate because they have billions to spend. Like, the market research that you do is like when you have some spare time aside from your full-time job, right? And you have very limited resources because you haven't even started what you were doing. So unless you're a very wealthy individual that has unlimited time, unlimited resources to do all the needed careful research, it's usually probably like faster and more practical to try to have bits and pieces to show the market. We've done this, now we've done this, now we've done this, now we've done this, as opposed to we'd like to do this, and then we'd like to do this, and then we'd like to do this, right? Tangible assets are better than speculative assets. I think this is for everything. I hope this answers your questions. And again, this is just like things that I have in my mind on a Thursday afternoon at 5 o'clock. I'm not an accomplished entrepreneur. So don't take my words as, you know, final answer to life problems, but probably ask yourself the right questions. Like, can you build fast and cheap and show your market your milestones? Adoption, achieve early adoption without or validation without having significant resources. What's your passion? Do you have a passion about it? Or did it just like you came up with a new idea because you think the new Uber for chicken feeds is better than other Uber for chicken feeds, right? So do you know what I mean? So I think passion means a lot, because passion, you end up asking yourself 10 times a day whether what you're doing is actually worth your time and energy and sweat. So there will be a lot of responsibilities on your head. There'll be a lot of responsibilities especially when you start paying people. And it's, you know, passion, and more than passion, like real confidence and trust in what you're building is key. And it's important that you build that early on and that you have that early on. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for you to persist. Anyone else? I can pick up on another question if you want.
Okay, so let me quickly check through to see if we have some other questions from our audience. Just give me a few seconds. Let me check through and see if there are other questions. Okay, so I think we've sort of taken all the questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're back on. I think you.
Yeah. I think I had a tiny challenge with my network. So
Right.
yes, I think yes, those are really bulk of the questions. I think the last question was, I think the question around the ideology of mixing up a startup and SMEs in this part of the country. That was the question that that person asked. So there's a general confusion with so many people really when they hear startup, when they hear SME, they equate them as the same thing. So, but for a lot of practitioners in the tech ecosystem that sort of feel they are not the same with ample examples. I think that's why it's asking that question that, how does one manage that assumption that startups are the same thing as the regular SMEs? So a bakery vis-a-vis a fintech, a school vis-a-vis an edtech platform, a barber shop vis-a-vis an e-commerce company. So at times people confuse, they use the same models and explanation for the two. So I think he's just asking, Dairo, what do you think? What's your perspective in this? Or what do you feel about this confusion?
This terminology is a actual pain, but I think there is one specific feature that needs to be taken into account. So in the age of software can be replicated because it can be copied and pasted at no cost or a marginal cost, right? In the sense that you don't have to replicate the whole infrastructure to replicate the service, right? This allows for economies of scale, which means you're able, with the same resources, like with a curve of return of revenues that goes very steeply up, you're able to achieve that with a curve of cost, an increasing cost, which is very slow, because you usually have to like add a bit of infrastructure cost into the infrastructure. Maybe you need one more developer because you cannot keep up with 10,000 users, right? As opposed to having another baker, if you start selling 300 pieces of bread as opposed to 50, right? And I'm being optimistic, right? So there are businesses are based on revenues and cost, right? And the cost structure of startups is very specific in the sense that it moves much more slowly than the revenue structure, right? Because you're able to generate exponential revenue with just an arithmetic curve of cost increase, right? And this is allowed by the rise of digital, right? The fact that the cost of replication is marginal, right? So to put it less technically, the difference that I see between an SME and a startup is the cost structure and the fact that the cost of any additional business for a startup will be dramatically less than than it would be for a company that needs physical assets or like physical resources to grow a business, right? And that's also, for instance, why you don't really talk about scalability for like a solar energy company, because that's that's in the same terms, right? Like a solar panel startup is not exactly like a Paystack, because Paystack generates revenue on commission, on flat fees for people that implement, apply, use those payment gateways in their own business at no effort, aside from the cost of servers and the cost of software maintenance. Paystack is able to generate a recurring revenue and automatic revenue, right? Whereas if you need to install a new solar panel, you need a technician, someone who does the assessment of the ground, of the space, an infrastructure that brings cables to at least your light bulb in your room and your television, right, etc., etc. So the cost structure, which is enabled by software, is, I think, what determines the difference between startups and startup types of growth and SME type of growth. Now I'm being very like radical about startups only being software. Someone could probably say a company in its early days, because of the growth potential of that company and the growth trajectory of a company in its early stages, could be a startup by way of effectively starting up, right? You can call yourself a startup. It doesn't matter. What you need to keep in mind is that your curve, especially if you're to pitch to an investor, might be like this, and it's perfectly fine. But you don't want to pitch your curve of return like this if your cost structure doesn't allow that, right? To give an idea, Briter wasn't born as a startup. Briter is effectively an SME providing research, right? The construction of a platform that is subscription based, that people pay for to have complete access to, that enables a mechanism, like ignites this mechanism whereby Briter could have, and probably has, revenues at marginal cost, because for every paid subscription, I don't need to do basically anything but ensuring the smooth the smooth functioning of the platform with the resources that I have, right? And that's the difference, right? The research side, the consulting side, I need all of us on top of projects. The platform is there. Once it's built, people can operate, right? Now we're selling the API for it. I don't want to talk much about it, I want to sell it, right? But I'm saying the fact that we are enabling people to plug into our platform by paying the licensing and then using on their platform, that comes at a marginal cost, at a diminishing cost. Once we've paid for like the cost of setting that system up, everything else will be basically profits, right? And marginal cost for maintenance. This is, I guess, the difference. Or I think a useful way to understand the difference between the two. And it's very important for you as a founder to identify your cost structure and the ability you have to grow, right? Like your growth trajectory, growth potential. I hope this answers your question.
I think, Dairo, you did justice to the question, and I think we're at the point where we have to let you go. We've taken an hour plus of your time, and I think this session has been very, very exciting, eye-opening, and we're very happy and humbled to have you join us for this October edition of the Ob1 Epic Hour. I do hope that Ob1 and FCMB will be listed on Briter because we are one of those financial institutions that has been driving and supporting tech startups, although quietly, but I think we are now much more visible with several of our actions in the ecosystem. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to all our participants. We can assure all our participants that this engagement is recorded, and we are going to share it digitally via our platform and via other channels within our community. So once more, thanks a lot, Dario. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah, so we'll catch up later.
Thanks, everyone. Everyone can
Thank you.
add me to LinkedIn and whatever social media, and happy to chat there. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
And you too. Bye.